recorded live.
Hello and welcome to the Castle of Horror interview segment where we talk to writers and creators of today's genre worlds. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, creator of the Alex Van Helsing novels, and this week we're talking to the lead curators of Shudder TV. Shudder TV, which is a new specialty application / channel curation experience regarding horror of almost all kinds. And, I'm going to talk to these guys, and they're going to explain to me how I said all of that entirely wrong, but I've been playing with Shudder TV, and I want to get their feedback on it. These two guys say their goal is to curate a library based on taste, madness, enthusiasm, and the unbelievable. So with me is Colin Geddes, lead curator of Shudder. He joined Shudder from the Film Festival world, where he was selecting cutting-edge films for the Toronto International Film Festival. And in addition to that, he's also been festival director of Action Fest, a film festival dedicated to showcasing international action cinema. And at Shudder, he applies his passion for genre films to developing the best experience for horror enthusiasts. Say hello, Colin.
Hey there, how are you doing?
Outstanding, and it's good to hear from you. And also with us is curator Sam Zimmerman, newest addition to the curator team at Shudder TV. Zimmerman represents a well-respected voice in the enthralling community while racking up his impressive knowledge from past work as a former web editor at Fangoria and most recently managing editor of the horror site Shock Till You Drop. He's recognized as an early champion of acclaimed contemporary horror, including The Babadook and Kill List. And he says he will watch anything with witches. Sam, say hello.
Hey, how are you?
Outstanding. So I wanted to have you guys on because I had become exposed to Shudder TV very recently, and I was interested in talking to the people who put it together and figuring out like what goes into the decisions in making the app. And and as we talk, I'm actually going to be bringing it up on an iPad here in the studio. So first of all, could one of you explain to me, because this is a podcast dedicated to horror and aimed at horror fans, and we usually do retrospectives around different topics. So like for 6 weeks at a time, we'll do something on, possession movies, and then 6 weeks will be something on evil babies and whatever. So I thought that it would be kind of right up our listeners' alley, but would one of you like to explain what is Shudder TV?
So I think that it sounds like Shudder just might be a perfect companion to what you're doing on your podcast. So what is Shudder? It's a subscription-based video on-demand service, a streaming service, where you can watch all kinds of horror films. We specialize in horror films. Now, the difference between ourselves and other video on-demand services, so our subscription-based VODs, is that we curate what's on there. Sam and I go through lists, and we pick what we feel are the best in horror, the underrated in horror, and we really love and are devoted to this stuff and stand behind pretty much all the picks that we have on there, and we can kind of boast that it's all killer and no filler. So that's what Shudder is. It's kind of like a virtual video store, and we're busy right now stocking the shelves.
It's really interesting because it'd be like having a video store that's nothing but horror movies. I mean, like, for instance, last night I was working on a video game script, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was using Shudder, and I was watching Jean Rollin, some French zombie movie. I'm amazed at the different collections. So, for instance, if there's me, you have collections that go towards like Gothic horror, and you have collections towards J horror. Now, so in other words, there's no romance, there's no anything else. You've just picked horror, and then you're going really deep and wide inside that one band. Do you guys just have this working knowledge in your heads of the horror genre?
Sure. I mean, I think the answer is yeah, and I think we'll find that there are a lot of people like us. I mean, you devote time to a horror podcast, so you're similar in that sense where you do have that working knowledge. And I think there are a lot of people who get into horror early. They find that they love it in adolescence, so they spend, much of their adolescence and teens and 20s and so forth and so on, watching as many horror movies as they can. And then in certain cases, you know, folks like Colin and I managed to make a career out of it. So you have Colin who, you know, he has to be up there with, you know, seeing more movies than anyone just based on festival programming, but spending, you know, 2 decades, you know, introducing people to all manner of international horror through TIFF and other festivals. And then myself, I took that love of horror and kind of love of film and went to school with it and really kind of hunkered down with cinema studies and wrote, you know, in a similar sense of watching horror constantly because I was writing and working at Fangoria and Shock Till You Drop and really kind of seeing everything that came my way.
Do you find that people tend to stay in their comfort zones? Like, in other words, like I said, like I like to watch Jean Rollin French vampire movies from the 60s and Italian slasher films from the 70s. And so that's my scene, right? And do you feel like people tend to generally stay in their corner, so you have to figure out how to keep those guys happy, or do you find people will cross over into different universes?
I think people will cross over. What we're trying to do is we're trying to really program a broad selection of horror, which kind of goes into all kinds of different directions, from slasher films to supernatural films, monster films, and sometimes we kind of push the boundaries. We're not just out to satisfy one particular demographic of horror film fan. Everyone's got different things. I mean, Sam and I kind of like joke about how we're like sommeliers of horror. We meet people, and they're the ones who are like, oh, I don't really like horror, and we kind of talk them through what they actually like. Everyone kind of likes horror, but what a lot of people don't like is kind of terror and sometimes violence. And so we try and maybe guide them to what they actually do like. And that's actually one of the things that we do within the service by having all these different programs, is that we try and make it easy for the audience to find the film that they want to watch quickly and fast.
I see. Just to name a few, because you have so many different collections. Asian horror, alien intruders, these are themes, basically. Comedy of terrors, which is comedy horror. Eco-terror, gross anatomy, haunted habitations, and so on and so forth. And each one has, it looks like about a dozen. Typically, you'll try to create this sort of biteable kind of collection of horror movies to fit into that genre.
I think people do cross over. I think if you're a horror fan by nature, you want your boundaries pushed. You want your comfort zone shaken up. At the same time, if horror houses your favorite film, there's something about having a favorite film that is comforting, that is a film you can return to. So there's both sides of that. I mean, I can watch something like American Werewolf in London anytime, you know, I need that comfort. But then we are also building these collections to help people find films not only in the aesthetic they love, you know, if it is something like Gothic manners, you like to just kind of live in that aesthetic, but to find things and learn about, you know, films outside of that, you know. If we're building a flesh-eating frenzy section that's all cannibal films and you haven't seen much of the Italian Mondo stuff like Cannibal Holocaust, you know, we have it there for you to see it and really get into it and learn about it and check it out.
I love that you have a section on possession. Like, we did a whole retrospective on the podcast about you know, possession and exorcism movies. This is really cool stuff. There's Lisa and the Devil. Again, my own fetish going towards Eurotrash, but still, you know, I'm amazed at how you pulled these things together. So, okay, here's a question: you're at a party, you run into somebody, they go, "Oh, what do you do?" And you go, "Well, you know, I curate a library of horror movies." And they go, "Oh, I hate horror." I hear this a lot. What do people mean when they say that? When somebody says, not really necessarily knowing how deep you go with this stuff, what do you think they usually mean when they say, "I don't like horror movies"?
I'd say, Sam and I have been talking about this often, and I think that what it is people relate horror to terror and violence. And personally, I prefer kind of more phantasmagorical, haunted house, ghost-type stuff, as opposed to home invasion, serial killer stuff. I dabble in that and I can enjoy it. But the average person, when they think of horror films and they get that kind of gut reaction, it's usually they've just seen or experienced the wrong kind of horror film. Yeah, they wandered into Hostel, and no one should wander into Hostel. I mean, Hostel is a film that I defend, but it's not for everyone. Just the same way that roller coasters are not for anyone. Or if someone says, I don't like Chinese food, well, if they've only had crappy frozen or buffet food and never actually had proper Chinese food, then that's the thing. So what I try and do is I try and kind of cut through that and find out, it's like, well, hey, you like fairy tales. Okay, well, you know what? Fairy tales are kind of horror films, and try and lead them to find out what they actually do like. And usually it is just the kind of the aversion to terror and real life violence that's in horror films.
I think it's that. I also think, you know, when you talk to horror about someone who, you know, isn't a deep dive fan of it, the most readily identifiable subgenre of horror is slashers. So most often you'll hear someone say something like, oh, I don't like slasher movies. And you know what? They probably even haven't seen that many slasher movies. It's just the closest synonym of horror that they can think of. So they associate horror with slasher movies. They associate it with that real-life violence, but they also associate it with a subgenre that truly isn't for everyone because it was essentially built off of, you know, exploiting the success of movies like Halloween. So, you know, they think it's just a guy in a mask with a butcher knife, and there are a lot of great movies that are a guy in a mask with a knife, but if they think it's only one thing, they're not going to be inspired to explore anymore. So normally if someone says that to me, I mean, the first thing I do is say okay, because, you know, no one wants to be met with like aggression at their own personal taste, but I do try and open it up and ask, you know, if they only think of horror in that one way. Because you think of something like, if everyone likes The Exorcist, they don't think of it in terms of a subgenre. They don't think of it as a possession movie. They think of it as The Exorcist. So you just try and open up the window and say, do you like this movie? And if you find a film they like and you go, well, that's a horror movie, you can open it up and they can go, oh yeah, maybe I do like it. Maybe I do like it more than I thought. Maybe I know about it more than I thought.
Can I ask about something that Colin was just talking about? Yeah, and I'm curious if both of you have feelings about this. So Colin brought up, he said they are associating, some people associate horror with terror, and I think by that you mean this so you'll have to educate me, but like Bruce Wright, who wrote this book called Night Walkers years and years ago about Hammer horror, he was saying, you know, there's horror and there's terror. Horror is a fear of cosmic and of things that are larger than you, and terror is a fear of being torn apart. And that was his distinction. Stephen King says the opposite. He goes, terror is the cosmic and horror is the fear of bodily harm.
I definitely think it's a useful distinction, and I'm going to throw another name into that mix there and up the ante. James Twitchell's Dreadful Pleasures, which came out in the 80s, he talks about the distinction of the two. Horror always has kind of a lingering, kind of unquantifiable dread to it, okay? Terror is reality-based. So a killer coming to you with a knife, the outcome of that is predictable. You know how that's going to happen because it's all rooted within reality. It's all bound by physics. A poltergeist, there's no rules. A vampire, there is no rules. A curse, there's no rules. That's very different. So horror and terror. You're Next. Everything in that film, I love that film to death. Super fun, but everything is rooted in reality and has kind of a predictable outcome. If you throw in something, an element supernatural, all bets are off.
There's this tendency for the pendulum to swing. You know, so you think of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 1973, you kind of think maybe that movie wouldn't have been as effective as it was if it weren't coming at the tail end of this tremendous Gothic period. At least if I understand what you're saying, you're going with this notion that terror means, you know, a danger that follows rules. And, you know, so Chainsaw comes at the end of the Gothic period and says, listen, we've got new things to scare you. We're going to go with this for a while. Very, very cool. Do you find, are you guys learning something new? I mean, are you discovering movies that you've never come across before? I mean, I would assume that you would almost have to, but I don't know. Maybe you just go that deep.
Oh, no, 100%. This is, I mean, I think being a film fan is always kind of a learning experience. You're never going to see everything. You can't see everything. But this is an excuse to dive even deeper. And, I mean, there's stuff, I'm learning from Colin. I mean, when we look for titles, there are titles where Colin's like, I'm looking for this, I love this, and then I get to go off and find it and see it.
How do you find the time to watch all these movies? I mean, to you know, I know this is your job, but I mean, is that how your day divides up? Is like, you know, from 9 to noon we're going to watch new stuff and consider it, and then, I mean, how does that actually work?
It can divide up. I mean, every day is different just because of different things we're working on. But I mean, a lot of it does come from a deep set knowledge, which is why I think Colin and I are very appropriate for this job. So, you know, most of everything, or not most of everything, but a lot we have seen, and a lot that becomes available to us at Shudder we have seen. So there, you know, more often than not, we're able to at least make, even if we haven't seen the film in a couple of years, we can make an educated sort of, hey,
sure,
this is what my opinion on the film is. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of days where, you know, I will watch multiple movies.
I think really the secret is Sam and I didn't realize that in our teenage years we were actually working for Shudder. I mean, as a kid, I just watched voraciously. I mean, I worked in a video store. Essentially, I'm working again in a video store, but it's online. And I just consumed so much stuff. I stayed up late. I watched films, and also I'm from a generation where you actually had to go out of your way to find this stuff. It wasn't on tap like it is with this service. But yeah, we just watched a lot of things. And another thing I'd just like to kind of point out, just about horror film fans and about what we're trying to do with the service is, a lot of people look down on horror film fans and kind of just give them the same old, just crap. I mean, I'm not going to talk about any kind of big name competitors that we have, and not even competitors, because what they are is their Walmart, we're a boutique. But a lot of services just buy horror content and really don't have any filters. Horror film fans have to watch a lot of crap and a lot of terrible stuff to find the good stuff. So you can't flog off subpar stuff to horror film fans because they're going to smell it. I mean, you have to go through a lot of stuff to get to a film like The Babadook, to get to a film like Let the Right One In, to get to like a film like I mean, any of the classics, like I mean, back to like Lisa and the Devil, to get to the Pang Brothers, The Eye. You've got to go through a lot to get there. And so a lot of people don't give horror film fans the credit that they deserve, that they know they know quality when it comes to scary stuff.
To go back to Dance Macabre for a second, I remember Stephen King talking about how you know, something like you have to watch an awful lot to come across the stuff that you really think is fantastic, and that's the curation piece that you guys are doing, is you're saving people having to go through a whole lot. But you know, having said that, sometimes we even appreciate things, you know, a film that's a lesser film, but it might be of a form that we want to go really deep in. So I might be really into, I don't know, Eurotrash, and so I might actually want to go ahead and suffer through some really awful Spanish zombie movies just because I want to be a purist and see a lot of them, or because I want to learn more about the particular genre. But I'm just sort of amazed at the breadth of what you've got going on here. All right, let me leave you with this. I would like each of you to name something in the service that you totally recommend that people may not be familiar with. So what would you point out that you've got in the collection that people totally need to check out, each of you? Colin, like, what would you recommend most that has either come in recently or that
now, Sam, I think as soon as you said that question, Sam would be like, oh, the other one's going to scoop our favorites. Sam and I we both like similar stuff, and there's a lot of gems in that service. And I'm going to lay claim on Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Pulse. You were thinking about that, right, Sam? Pulse by Kiyoshi Kurosawa, which was remade, inferior remake. Kiyoshi Kurosawa he's a Japanese master, but he makes these really subtle, creepy films that get under your skin. And Pulse is basically he killed it and made the best and really almost rightfully only internet horror film. And it's about ghosts in the internet. Basically a viral haunting, which just gets worse and worse. So check out Pulse by Kiyoshi Kurosawa.
Excellent. Very good. Pulse by Kiyoshi Kurosawa. And I see that here. I just went and searched for it. Sam, what about you?
Well, first, I just wanted to add to what you were just saying about being a purist and seeing everything you can, because I totally agree with that. You have to, sometimes in horror, when you want to be an expert in a particular subgenre, you go through it all. You need to know. But also one of the things I love about horror and horror fans and what makes horror fans film fans is not every movie is great. I mean, most movies aren't great. Greatness is a thing, that is almost defined by how few films or few pieces of art can really reach it. But horror fans find great moments in whole things that aren't great.
Yeah.
And that's what's really exciting too. We search through all these films to say, yeah, maybe the entire movie didn't work, but this scene, this image, that's what's seared in my brain. And that's what's important, too, to find those really terrific things in these films. And what I think makes horror fans, appreciative of film as an art form and kind of optimists in that sense. They're going to go through these movies that might not be entirely great, but they're going to find the thing that affected them about it.
Oh, my gosh, that's such a wonderful thought, because I've thought about that a lot, where you go, that movie, I can do without the whole 90-minute experience of that particular film, but that one particular image is something that I find inspiring, or that is going to give me nightmares, or is going to stay with me. You're absolutely right. I really like that thought. So, are you actually trying to figure out some method for, like, queuing people up and going, hey, the one thing you definitely don't want to miss is the X or the Y in this particular film?
We do that, I think, with a lot of our supplemental stuff. We'll point out images, historical context, I think, in the actual text on the site and the synopses, and both in the collection and the individual film synopses. You'll find Colin and I on our Twitters and Instagram. I mean, we have really amazing collaborators on our social channels. Mike C. from Icons of Fright creates a lot of the videos on our YouTube, and he does an incredible job. And then Colin and I will come on and recommend particular films and expand our thoughts on why we love that film, why it's been curated on Shudder, what we're doing with it. So we totally find all the space so that you're not only just seeing Shudder as a site, but you can engage us. I mean, that's part of curation. I want people to feel like they can reach out and touch us and understand why we're picking the films we're picking. This is a very new edition. I think if you had asked me a couple of weeks ago, Colin, I'm sure Colin knew, I would have said Dream Home, which is a 2010 Hong Kong slasher, a film I love. I just love that movie. It's so smart and so much fun and really nasty. But we just got a film that is maybe one of my favorite films of all time. It's called Angst, and it's an Austrian film from 1981 by basically a one-time feature director named Gerald Cargill. And it's actually a film that has been groundbreaking and really inspiring to filmmakers like Gaspar Noé, who made Irreversible and Enter the Void. It is a home invasion film that is like just tremendously upsetting. It's maybe the most crucial home invasion movie. And Gerald Cargill and the cinematographer developed these incredible rigs that they actually attach to the main actor, who he himself puts in this incredible performance, but when accompanied by the way he's being filmed, I mean, the movie makes you really feel like you're losing your mind. And it's just this intense, visceral, kind of nonstop experience that it's just truly incredible. When you watch it, your mind is totally fucking blown. I love that film, and for a long time it wasn't available. It's a very graphic film, so yeah, I don't know what the U.S. release was ever like. I think maybe there were theaters. I think maybe there was a VHS, but it certainly hasn't been available in quite some time. And I know it's because when specialty DVD and Blue labels tried to get it and remaster it and put it out, even the director was hesitant because he was a bit upset by the content. He had wanted to re-edit it. Thankfully, he has since kind of come down from that stance to understand the film itself, and Cult Epics did a really wonderful restoration and put it out on Blu-ray. And now that it's widely available, we were able to get it. And I think we might be the only place that's streaming, which really makes me happy. I want people to be able to learn about this film and see this film. And it came with some other cool films like that, like In a Glass Cage. So we have a lot of really cool films. And Angst, I can't recommend this movie enough. It's a really singular experience.
Very cool. All right, guys. I know that I could probably just sort of keep asking you questions all evening, but we have to kill it somewhere. So thank you so much. I appreciate the recommendations. I think Shudder is a really, really interesting service that feels very unique, especially in the way you're creating these collections. So I think you're doing a wonderful job, if I may say that. Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully I'll get a chance to talk to you guys again soon. So Colin and Sam, thank you so much. Guys, check it out at Shudder.com.
It is indeed, yes, Shudder.com. And Shudder TV itself is actually a very cool continuous stream we have. So you can visit Shudder.com and then just click into Shudder TV, and films are just always streaming. So you can, discover something that way at total kind of random prowess. It's pretty rad.
That's outstanding. And by the way, I've got it on my Roku, so it's cool. I can just actually watch it on a TV. So, all right. Have a fantastic evening, guys. I appreciate you staying up to talk to us. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.